Okay, well, hello and welcome to everyone who is joining us on YouTube. And that could be quite a lot of people tonight as we're having terrible problems in our Connect room. So just to remind everybody, the URL for that is elainegiles.co.uk/live. And if you go over there, you will get the live stream via YouTube. But also hello to everybody who's watching the video later as well. Right, so I need to share my screen so everyone can see my screen. And then I'm going to get some slides up and we are good to go. Okay. Right, how's that? No, refresh it, it's working, honestly. Right, great. Okay, hello and welcome officially. Tonight we are going to be looking at Adobe Lightroom. Adobe Lightroom for mobile. Now the iPad version launched first, but it was quickly followed up with a version for the iPhone, and we'll be taking a look at both. But before we move on, for those who don't know me, I am Elaine Giles. Been a trainer for a long time, and I currently present the Map Bites podcast. I am also the official Adobe User Group Manager for the Northwest Adobe User Group, and that's based in the UK. Near Manchester we are. Now, this event is following on from our event last month, which was Adobe Lightroom 101. And what we concentrated on was everything to do with the desktop version. So getting going with the desktop version. Now, if you missed that, not too late, you can catch up on that on my YouTube channel. Just go to the YouTube and put in the Elaine Giles, all one word, and you will find the video from last month. But moving on to tonight. To make this work, there are three things that you're going to need. You are going to need, obviously, Adobe Lightroom Mobile for either iPhone, iPod Touch, or the iPad, or indeed both. And that is a free download, downloaded via the Mac App Store. No, it is not available for Android yet, but that is, as I say, the first thing you will need, a mobile version of Lightroom. The next thing you will need is Lightroom 5.4, and that is the minimum version of Lightroom that will work with the mobile version of Lightroom. Now, it's not a paid for update, so if you have got Lightroom 5, any version of it, boxed version or whatever, then it will work with that. It's just 5.4 and it was a free update that came out when the mobile device came out. The third thing you will need is a Creative Cloud account. And the reason that you need that account is although the software on the desktop is one thing and the software on your iOS device is another, you will need a Creative Cloud account to act as a conduit between the two. Because you will need to synchronize what's on your desktop with what is on your mobile device, which is what we're looking at next, which is you will need the synchronization between the two. And that does not happen directly. The way it works is, the synchronization we need, which is the grey arrow at the bottom, isn't direct. It needs to synchronize from your desktop, which is on the left-hand side of that, sorry. It needs to synchronize up to your Creative Cloud account. And then it needs to synchronize down to the Lightroom version installed on your iOS device. And once you have that working properly, then you end up with a fully working synchronized system. Now you'll notice that all of those arrows, there's double-headed ends on them there. It's not a one-way thing. It's not I work on the desktop and then push that up to the cloud and nothing goes back the other way. The whole system is bi-directional. The changes you make on the desktop are pushed up to the cloud and then pushed down to your mobile device, and vice versa. All the changes you make on your mobile device pushed up to the cloud and then pushed back to your desktop. So although it's going in a rather circuitous route through the cloud, it is in effect a direct link between the two. So what happens on the desktop is reflected in the mobile app. What happens in the mobile app is reflected on the desktop. So having got the theory out of the way, let's actually go and have a look at it. So the first thing I'm going to do is to show you the mobile version. So to do that, I will need Reflector, and there is my iPad. I have the app already installed. As I say, it is free of charge. And what I'm going to do is just tap on that and go into it. Now, if you had not run that before, what you will get is a whole hand-holding thing where it talks you through logging in. So in essence, there's lots of nice pretty pictures, but all it's doing is logging you in. So to save time, I've logged in. But as you can see, it's not actually synchronizing yet. There's nothing going on in the synchronization department at all. But I'm showing you this first because this is probably where you'd think, I want to use the mobile version, and you'd head off into here to do it. There are some things you can do at this stage. And the first of those is, of course, to log in. So I've just tapped in the top right-hand corner, and there's a few options that I can set up in here. None of what I'm going to do in here will actually force it to synchronize yet. That has to come from the desktop. But there are a few things I can do. So the first option is sync only when you're on Wi-Fi. Now, my iPad's a 3G iPad. The 3G is turned off at the moment, and I have got that enabled to only sync. The next two options, I'm going to skip the second one, come back to that in a moment, but you may want to enable or indeed disable the collect usage data. What that's doing is sending data back to Adobe. Now, I'm always, one, highly suspicious of that, and two, worried that it will impact performance, so I actually have that turned off. Then moving down this list, we've got the About Adobe Lightroom, which is just purely information. But a couple of things that are interesting is the gesture shortcuts. Now, I know that text is really tiny and very hard to read, which is very silly, because it's actually quite useful information, but I will be talking through most of that. But rather than make notes, if you whip back into there later, you can give yourself a quick look at what all the shortcuts were in terms of gestures. You can also clear the cache. So if you're having syncing problems, then come into here and clear the cache. The other option that's useful is to reset the help overlays, because what you will see in here as I start working through it is help overlays appearing, telling me what gestures I can use in order to do things and do things quicker. So if you've forgotten what they are, you can reset them so they always appear every time you go into it, and it'll just give you a little bit of a reminder about what you can do. The other thing that you can do here is to sign out. And that means sign out of your Adobe Creative Cloud account. Now, I would suggest you only need to do that if you're trying to switch accounts. So if you're trying to work with this with somebody else, maybe there's you and your partner and you've got one iPad and they've got their account, you've got your account, you want to use it. There's no concept of just switching an account. You do have to log out and then log in with the second account. And that's where you would do that. Now, the disk usage at the bottom, don't panic, because the first time I looked at that, I thought, I've not got that much space in Creative Cloud. It's referring to the iPad or the iOS device. So I have a 64 gig iPad, which looks as though it has 58 gig of usable space, and 52 of it is already full. That's a long story after my iOS 8 update. It looked much worse yesterday, trust me. But that's what that is actually referring to. Now, to go back to the other one option that's left, which is presentation mode. Presentation mode is probably something you will never use. But on the off chance that, like me, you're demonstrating the app, it's fabulous. So I'm going to turn that on. And what will happen when I turn it on is as I tap, you will see a big red dot. So I'm tapping, you see a red dot. So rather than me copiously explain precisely in terms of pixels where I'm tapping, you should actually be able to see where I'm tapping. So that's as far as we can go at this stage, because this device is not synchronizing with my account yet. Well, actually, that's not true. This device is synchronizing with my account because you've got me in the top left corner, but my desktop version is not synchronizing with this. So next thing to do, let's have a look at Lightroom on the desktop. And there it is. Now, if you were with us last month, you'll remember these photos. These were the Italian photos. That I changed them all, but I have since changed them all back. So these have no processing on them at all. I made them look really lurid. It was all for demonstration purposes, honestly. But that's what we're looking at here. So there's a few photos in this Lightroom library, but not too many. And I do have some collections, which are down the side. So if you're familiar with Lightroom, I've done nothing special at the moment. If you're not familiar with it, you soon will be. So what I need to do is, up in the top left-hand corner, there is something called the nameplate. There is an ID plate up there. And most of the time, you never go in there. You either set it up once and leave it, or you're not even aware you can do anything with it. But this is where you configure Lightroom Mobile. So going up to there and then clicking the drop down, you can see that at the moment, I'm not logged in. So I'm not logged into my Creative Cloud account. You don't actually need to be logged into your Creative Cloud account to do anything on the desktop in Lightroom. The only reason that you would log in here is to synchronize with your mobile device. So the first thing I need to do is to log in. So it's going to connect me, and it's going to give me my Adobe ID, and then I need to put my password in to continue. So what I'm doing on my other screen is I'm using 1Password to get my password, and there it is, and I'm going to paste it into here. So paste into there and sign in. Simple as that. That's all that's needed. And then it starts giving me information. So it's saying how to sync. And this is actually like a little tutorial that will take you through it. It's telling you that the syncing mechanism relies on collections. It does not take all of your raw files and synchronize the lot to your mobile device. You have complete control of it via your collections. Now, looking back to what we looked at last time, which was what is a collection, it's a grouping of photos either based on criteria. So I think the example I gave was, let's imagine you have 2 cameras and you would like to synchronize all the photos from one particular camera. Then you could make a smart collection. So that's one thing that you could do. The other thing you can do is just make a collection, name it whatever you like, and manually add photos to it. So that gives you a little bit more control, but the smart collections automatically update, which is fantastic. So if you have a smart collection based on criteria, they automatically update. So that is how it will synchronize. So that's what it's telling us here, and it's got a nice overlay over the collections to tell you that that's where they are. So we've got that information, it's all there, we are now good to go. So it's up here. Let's go back in and have a look what it says. It's now saying sync with a Lightroom Mobile. It's got my account configured, and that's it. That's all I have to do. So all I literally had to do was log in, and it's sorted. Now, if I went back to my iOS device, which I can do, so let's go back to my iOS device, or I would do. It looks like it's not reflecting anymore. Come on, behave yourself. No, it's saying it is, but it's not. It's lying to me. There we go. It's still got nothing there, because at this stage, the two are connected. They're connected via the remote Creative Cloud, but I haven't told it what to synchronize yet. So going back into Lightroom, that's my first job, to choose what I want synchronized with it. It has to be a collection, so I'm going to choose this Italy collection. And I'm going to right click on there, and the options I have are sync with Lightroom Mobile. So just clicking on there, and that's it. That's all there is to it. What you do see here is a little symbol, double-headed arrow next to the collection, and it's saying it's synchronizing them. Now, I wouldn't want you to miss this. So that's what's happening on my iOS device. It's saying now there's one collection. It says 3 photos. That's not true. I think there's 15. But it is actually pushing them up to the cloud. And as you can see, the first ones are coming through. They are going up to the cloud. They're not even all there yet, but the iPad is starting to pull them down. So what will happen is it will carry on doing that, and I can carry on working. I could actually, if I wanted to, go into here and start working with it. And that is one of those overlays that's telling me if I tap with 2 fingers, it will display the photo's metadata. So I'm going to tap once to dismiss that. And if I just sat here, then all those images would come through. But I don't have to wait. If I want to start working with my images, I can just tap, go into them. Now you can see these things are annoying, aren't they, these little overlays, but do read them because they are actually very useful. But it's giving me the same information, so I'll just tap once. And I can swipe onto my next image too if I want. So even though it's not fully synchronized, you can work with it. So let's just go back to the desktop one. There's no actual indication here that this is uploading. There's no progress bar or anything. It's just happening in the background. And that is all you need to do in the desktop version. That's it. So if I minimize that, then we're going to go into the iPad here and start doing some work with it. So I'm going to go back, which is I'm using that back button in the top left, as you can see. And it's done. It has actually synchronized all 15 of those photos. So let's have a look what we've got on the mobile device here. And just a little aside at this point, I can see that people are dropping in and out of Connect like a yo-yo. So could I recommend the YouTube stream, which so far, so good, fingers crossed, seems to be all right. Okay, so we've got our 15 images. If I had more collections synchronizing, I'd be seeing them at this point here. I would have a poster thumbnail, so a poster image for the collection, and I'd have one of those for each collection. And it isn't just read only at this end. I can do things in here if I want to. So for instance, I can go into there and I can see my images. I can also go back to this and let's have a look. It's taking me in. There we go. Let's go up there and do it. I can start working with these images. So let's have a look at all the options that we've actually got. So those are my images. Now the first thing to understand, because I'm just getting a question in. Right. Oh, good grief. My images are raw images and my iPad's small. I don't have much storage. What will happen? It's not synchronizing your raw images. It is synchronizing what's called smart previews. And smart previews are just as the name implies, smart previews of your image. They're not the actual raw data, which could be 10, 20, even 30 meg per image. You will probably save about 90% of the storage capacity. So you could work that out. If you had 100 meg of photos, that would take 10 and so forth. So it's about a tenth the size of your collection that you transfer. Now, you will be able to see your images. So let's go into that one with the gondolas. You will be able to see your images. And it's not that it's a very poor quality of image. It's not. In fact, if I just show you that you can zoom in as well. So I'm doing a pinch out to zoom there. It's a very high quality image that you're working with. But how it actually works is when you make a change to your image, instead of it writing it back to the actual raw image, all it does is send back metadata that says the exposure on this is now 4 instead of 5, just as a very simple example. And sending that metadata is much easier in terms of the amount of data going up to the cloud and down to the desktop and backwards and forwards. You're just sending the metadata and the smart previews. So very, very straightforward in terms of what it's doing. And the good news is you are not transferring your raw images. They are smart previews. Now, if you think back to last time I talked about smart previews on the desktop and whether you wanted to create them or not on the import. So we imported some images off a camera card. And the question was, do you take the time, because it slows the import down, to make the smart previews? And I said I would, because it will save you time later. And this is when it will save you time. That's synchronized with this iPad much quicker than it's synchronized with my other iPad that I have got iOS 8 on today. And what I was doing was testing it out, seeing how long it would actually take to synchronize those images. And it took longer because I didn't generate the smart previews on import. Now they exist, it synchronizes much quicker. So that's a choice for you to make. Now, what have we actually got in here now? Well, I've come from my collection, so let's be absolutely certain where we are. This is the home screen of Lightroom Mobile. I've tapped to get into my collection. Within my collection, I have my 15 images, and I've tapped to get to that first image. In here, navigation-wise, I can swipe. You've seen that I can swipe, so let's move on to the next one. I'm swiping from there right to left to move on to the next image. But I've also got here some metadata. I have some metadata in the top left-hand corner, and I also have the histogram in the top right corner. Now, I don't think they're too intrusive, but if you don't want them, that overlay that repeatedly is popping up and saying, read me, and no doubt you probably didn't. I know I didn't the first time and then wished I had. Then that's telling you a 2-finger tap will alter the viewport that you have. So I'll tap with 2 fingers once and the histogram disappears. Tap 2 fingers again and the metadata disappears, but the histogram comes back. And tap 2 fingers again and the whole lot disappears. So those are the options that you have there. So it's all to do with that 2-finger tap. Turns them both on, turns one off, turns the other off, and then turns them both off again. So 2-finger tap. And that pretty much does the same all the way through. So wherever you are in Lightroom, if you're thinking, I wonder if, just try a 2-finger tap. You won't delete anything. That is certainly not what it will do. So it's worth a try. Now, moving down to the bottom here, because at the moment, I'm in sort of triage mode with my data. You may well be working on your iPad to just work through your data and think, do I like this image? Do I not like this image? And that you can do. So that's one thing that you can do. You can triage, you can organise, you can add photos here. You can actually edit them in the develop module, and you can showcase your portfolio. So let's have a look at all of that, starting with flagging images. So as you're working through them, you might think, I like that image or I don't like that image. So I'm going to go back to the beginning. Well, I don't dislike that image. It's okay. And I go to that one. I quite like that one, but it's not great for demos. So what I would do with that is change the flag on it. Now, down in the lower left-hand corner, there's a flag icon. The first thing to notice with this flag icon is when you tap it, it gives you another overlay. Don't dismiss that before you've read it, because it toggles, that little icon down in that corner, toggles between the stars and the flags. So the default is flags, but if you've tapped it and you think, where's the flag icon gone? It could be that you've switched the mode to ratings mode. So that's the first thing to think about. So I'm going to tap there to get rid of that overlay. And yes, it's gone to stars. So if I tap once more, it again gives me that. Eventually I should get back to the flag. There we go. And I can actually do it from there, but there's a better way. I want to flag this as no, this isn't going to work for what I want. So I'm going to put my finger in the middle and I'm going to scroll up to pick it, down to unflag it, which is the default, and down again to reject it. So I'm going to reject that image. So all I did with that was tap and hold, and you can see it's holding because there's a red dot. And as I scroll upwards with that, reject it, unflag it, or pick it. And it literally, as I'm doing that, it's going up and down in there, and I do want to reject that, so that one's gone. That icon in the lower left-hand corner that you're probably really struggling to see it's now got a cross in it. But I'm going to move on and work with the rest one. This one I do like, because when I did this on the desktop, I really changed the exposure of it. So I really do like that one. So I'm going to drag up and pick that one. And literally that's what you do. Just go through and do that to pick, reject, or just leave them unflagged. Simple as that. Go through. I will pick that one. I think we did work with that last time too. And there was also another one. It was that one, because I wanted that much punchier. It was far too warm. It was orange and far too warm. So I'm going to pick that one because I'm going to do things with that one as well. Okay, so I've gone through. I can do that in there. Now you've seen me navigate just by swiping left to right, right to left to move through them. But if you've got a lot of images, you may be looking for a specific image. So down on the bottom, you have 4 little icons, and the first of those, there we go, is the thumbnail track or the film strip view. And what you can do in here is go all the way through your images without changing the view at the top. And then when you do want to change the view at the top, you just tap on the image and it loads it in to the preview at the top. So that is a very quick way to work with your images. Right, so that's what we've got there at the moment. All we've done so far is work with the metadata on these images. We've not actually made any edits to it. But I did say that you could use the develop module, and you have, which is the second icon. So just tapping down there. Second icon there is the develop module. Now, again, we've got this overlay. This one's quite important too. When you've applied your changes, if you tap and hold 3 fingers on the screen, it will show you the before. And when you release it, it will show you the after. So we'll see that when we've made some changes. For the moment, I'll just get rid of that. And what you've got to work with here is where the thumbnails were, your film strip view, you now have your white balance, your temperature, your tint, and all the things that you're used to seeing in Lightroom on the desktop. And you can scroll across and see many more of them. And as I say, this image, I've not done anything with it at the moment. I did make some changes to it last time, but I reset all of these images. So moving back across here, let's have a look what we can do. So there's a tint on that at the moment, and when I tap that, we get another of these instructions, which is saying you can reset it by double tapping, which we can do. So I'll show you that. You move across there, so that is now very, very warm. All I did was tap and hold and drag across to the right. You can also do the same and drag it across to the left. Get it virtually green. So let's take it up to the red again. But you can double tap where it says tint plus 115, and it will take that back to what it was set to, which was 5. And you can do that with all of those. Now, a good place to start with an image is to auto-tone it, and by default that's turned off. But one tap on there and it turns it on. Now, it has sort of improved it, but now I've got sort of blown out areas, but it is actually brighter than it was. And remember that 3-fingered tap to check. Now, I could put my 3 fingers right in the middle of it, like that. And you'd see it fine apart from the red dots. That's the before, and that's the after. But of course, my hand is right across the screen of my iPad because my 3 fingers are on it. So luckily, it works just as well if I do that at the side. And now you can see it better, and I can certainly see it better. So it doesn't matter where those 3 fingers are, as long as they're on the actual image. That will give you your before and your after. And then tap to turn that off. And then literally you can work your way through all of these options. So in here, probably I would want to increase the white a little bit. So tapping on there. Now, if I start trying to move that whiteness, so I'm tapping and sliding, and I think, does that look better? Have I got blown out areas? I can't tell. So this is another tip. And what I'm doing now is I'm moving my keyboard now because I need to get clever. Now it's like playing the piano. I'm now putting 2 fingers on this track here and see what happens when I do. Anybody know what that mode is? If you're with us in the chat, do you know what that mode is? Do you know what it's showing you? Oh, wait a second, just show you what that's doing. As I slide those 2 fingers, you can see the sky coming back, which is blue. And I've also got some, I've just let go there. I've also got some red areas. What's the red areas showing? And if I release that, you should actually have a look there. Ah, very well done, Graham. The blown out whites, the blown out bits. And yes, as I hold that down with 2, you can see where it's red, they are actually blown out. As I drag across, once I start getting some blue bits in, that's where it's totally black. So I'm losing detail there. Losing detail. That's probably about right. And then, of course, I can actually do that with the blacks. So into the blacks, let's have a look there. And you can see I'm starting to lose detail as I go over here. If I drag it over the other way, get a little bit of detail back. And to be honest, it's a pretty good image to start with. That's probably about right. And then I can start doing other things with it. So the clarity, the vibrance. Now, I'm not going to do that with this image because it's quite dark to start with. I'll do that on one of the other images. But there's one more thing to think about here, which is what's happening back on the desktop at this stage. And I can tell you nothing is happening on the desktop at this stage because all of the changes that I'm making are not written back yet. They will be, but at the moment, if I just tap up there, just above there, there is a cloud icon, and the cloud icon has a plus on it. And what that's implying, well, what it's actually stating is, these aren't changed yet. You need to write these changes back to the cloud. So this is not saved yet. Now, I have 2 ways to make sure that this is saved. If I'm in the middle of editing this image and I want to make sure that everything that I've done is saved back up to the cloud, I can tap on that icon. And as it says there, adjustment changes pending to be synced. And I have the option to say sync it now. And that icon changes to a little pulse. And what it's doing is it's sending it back up to the Creative Cloud. I can carry on working. And now it's telling me it's done. I think that just flashed up, it's done. So as long as it wasn't saying there was an error, I hope not. Missed that. Okay, so it's sorting itself out. Right, it looks like it's finished. I can then carry on, make some more changes. So let's change the vibrance on that, just so there is a change there. And immediately the cloud icon and the plus comes back. So what that is saying, now again, you've got unsaved changes here. Now, because I've got unsaved changing on this one, I'm not going to elect to save them this time. What I am going to do is just go back to my collection. And you do that with the top left-hand corner. And if you look at the top right-hand corner now, it's automatically sending the changes back. So you can manually save the changes, but you don't have to. I would suspect you would need to know how to, but probably only do it when you really need to, because to be honest, it will take care of all of it. It will send it back as and when required. So let's try another image in terms of the development, because this one was very, very warm. So I'm going to go into my develop. And I'm going to make some changes to it. And I think what I did with this was I increased the whites, but I did it that way. So I do actually want this quite blown out because I want it much more contrasty than it was, and I want it a little bit cooler as well. So I'm also going to make the blacks a bit darker. So let's bring some black into there. And I'm going to change the vibrance. It was either vibrance or saturation. Let's go crazy. I'm not doing this from a perspective of making a good image at the end of it. I'm doing this so there's a lot of changes, so you can actually see that there's a lot of changes. And I don't think we want to saturate this, do we? We want to go the other way. We want to take some of that colour out. So I've got colour in the actual red parts of the food, but the actual shells themselves aren't going crazy. Then I'll add some clarity as well, just for good measure. Let's go mad. And that brings in some definition around the edges. So I've made a lot of changes to that. And again, these are unsaved changes at the moment, but as soon as I move off this image, they will be written back. So there is the beginning of what you can do with the develop module, and you can carry on working on all the images, some of the images, and go back into the same images as much as you like, but there is a lot of other things to have a look at, so I'm going to move along. I'm going to look at a different image, so let's go into this image. And this time, instead of the second option there, which is the develop presets, well, the develop module, I'm going to go into the third one, which is, these are presets. So if you've used Lightroom on the desktop, you'll be aware of presets. Although we will be looking at presets in more detail next time when we're looking at automating Lightroom. But presets are like a macro, if you are aware of what a macro is, or a saved recipe to apply to an image. And you have them grouped together here. So first of all, we have here creative. So I'm going to tap on there. And it loads in those presets, and you can literally just choose one of those. So I'm going to choose one that I don't think will look great, but go for cross process. I choose that one because it's very, very different, and you can see there is an immediate change to that image. If I tap there then to come out of that and have a look at that image, and if I do that, those 3-finger tap again, I can see the before and the after. So that works in this view as well. And I do tend to put that on the right hand side, I must admit, out of the way, so I can see it on the iPad. Obviously tonight I can see it on my iMac, which is much bigger. But all that's doing is throwing me because I'm actually having to put my fingers on my iPad, so looking at the iMac is not helping. Okay, so that was the creative collection. We've also got some colours in here as well. So let's say that I wanted this very cool. Again, that will be a very, very different look to it. I actually think this one would look quite nice in a black and white. And you have a whole range of black and whites to go through. So I want something quite punchy. So I'll go for contrast 75 there. There we go. So those are the presets that you have. Now, with the next option you have here, we've looked at the first 3. The last one down at the bottom here is the crop tool. And you can go into there and start working with your image. So I'm dragging the corner and it's saying I can reset it by double tapping. I don't actually want to reset it. What I want to do there is take that up a bit. So let's get it there. Now you can see what's happening. I'm not actually, you can see where the red dot is. That's where my finger is. But it's actually in scale. The ratio is completely in proportion at the moment. And that is because over on the right hand side there is a padlock. And if I tap that padlock, now I can make that any size I want, which is a little silly there, but so I'm going to take it up there so it's almost square. Now, when I say almost square, if I actually want it square, do have a look at the bottom, because we've got the aspect ratio of 1:1, we've got a 5:4, and you've got lots of options along the bottom there, and you can scroll across. You've also got centered. So if I tap that on and start to scale, it attempts to centre it within the area. So you've got that option as well. So those are the options that you have available for the crop. And I'm just going to do that zoom in, make sure we've got a decent crop area. And there we go. So I now have that sorted out. So let's come out of there and let's go back into all of the images, my thumbnails at the bottom there. Now, so far we've looked at changing the metadata, so flagging, the navigation through your images, also developing them manually, using some presets, and making crops. Now, the other thing that your iPad absolutely excels at is slideshows showing your portfolio. And you can do that in here as well. So I'm going to go back to my images there. And so look what options we have up here. Now I just wanted to show you these before we move along. We have here all images, but if you just wanted the unflagged images, you can filter. So what you've got available there are filters. You can choose the picked images, you can choose the rejected images if you just want to make absolutely sure. You can choose images that are 1 star, 2 star, or more than 3 stars. You can also change the sort options. Now the default is as they came in from Lightroom on your desktop, but you can actually alter all of that in there. But I'm going to go all the way back, which is to the home screen of Lightroom Mobile, and point out that there's actually some controls here that would be very easy to miss. And down here there is a play button in the lower, I'll just tap there, just above that red dot. There is a play button, and that is your slideshow options. So I've tapped play and it is actually playing. What it's doing, this is the default. Each image is on the screen for 2 seconds, and the transition between them is a fade out. So it fades out and then the next one fades in. And because there's 15, it will take about 30 seconds to go through them all. Obviously, that's a bit too fast, and maybe you don't want them faded in either. Maybe you would like a different transition. Or maybe you would like to talk somebody through images. So particularly when you've taken images for somebody like a wedding, you want to build up the momentum, don't you? And you want to move on at your own pace. So maybe not having it autoplay like that. Well, if I just tap once, you can see advance with transition. And then a bonus, try a 2-finger swipe, but it doesn't tell you what that does. No, I'll tell you what that does. So I'm tapping to lose that. Once I've tapped, it actually stops. So at this stage, now it's in manual mode. So I can just swipe and it goes on to the next image. So it swipes across to the next image. But it said bonus 2-finger swipe. What does that do? So now I've got 2 and I'm swiping. In fact, is that the last image? Let's make sure it's not. There we go. What that does is it moves on to the next image, but it uses the transition that you actually have set in here. So it is a bonus, but it would be nice if it did actually tell you what that did. Now, I've tapped once at the top, and this slideshow has stopped at the moment. But you see what happens? It only leaves that there for a second before I actually have to go in and do it again. But what's up here are 3 options. I have, don't keep disappearing, I have the cross, which will actually take you out of slideshow view. So that's what that one does. I have some options, and I also have a play button over here in the top right, and that will set it going again. But I'm going to stop that. I'm going to go in and have a look at the options. You only have a few options at the moment, but looking at that dialog box, I would predict that they will add some extra options, because it could certainly take some extra options. So what you're setting in here is the actual transitions you want. You can have no transition, a crossfade, a wipe, or a flip. Now the flip is very different than the other two, so I'm going to leave it set to flip. And the other option you've got here is a slider, which isn't very helpful when you've got that dot. So I'm going to move my dot out of the way and show you it goes from 2 seconds all the way over to 15 seconds. And it does that in very tiny increments. So you could have 8.3 seconds if you wanted. But I'm going to leave that set to 2 and just tap there. And at this stage, it's not auto playing again. If I want it to autoplay, I need to tap and I need to tap play. And now it's got a totally different transition on it. Now I'm just going to stop that at that stage. 2 seconds with that transition is probably too much, but I'm just showing you the principle here. But it's stopped at the moment. But if you remember the 2-finger swipe, if I do that 2-finger swipe, so I'm attempting to do it, come on, it does use the transition that's set in the slideshow options. It does not use a default one, just give you a transition. It does give you the transition that you have specified, but you retain the control of when that moves on to the next image. And all I've done there is that 2-finger swipe from right to left, and it will do that. Now, that's the slideshow option. Actually quite handy. It does look pretty good. And if you could reflect this to an Apple TV, then you could have your portfolio being displayed anywhere you are. So it's a good way if you've actually taken images, that very day, to have them showing during a coffee break or something. And it does work brilliantly to do that. Obviously, I'm reflecting this at the moment with my iPad, so I know that it works and you can see that it works too. Now, at the moment, what we haven't done, so coming out of the slideshow there is one other menu option here which is hidden. And it's hidden because that poster image for that collection is by default the first image. But if I wanted a different one, then I could go into my collection, and I actually think for this one, the red one here would work really well. That's a good image to have as my poster image. If I go back to there and tap and hold, I get a menu, and one of those options is set as cover. And that's it. That's all I have to do. As soon as I go back, it's automatically updated it. Now I've changed my image. You should be able to see that just above my red dot there's a menu. It's got 3 dots on it. And when I tap on there, I have some extra options here. One of those is add from the camera roll. I can also enable auto import. Now that means whenever you take an image with your iOS device camera, it will be added into Lightroom, and in fact, it will be added into this collection. You can also enable offline editing. So if you have a Wi-Fi only iPad and you're heading off and you have no Wi-Fi, what it will do is make sure that it downloads everything it needs to enable you to work offline. Obviously, that will depend on the storage capabilities of your iPad, but as long as you have enough space, you would be able to work completely offline. Rename refers to the collection name. So if I wanted to change it from Italy to Rome, then I could do that. I could also remove this collection, and I'm definitely not going to do that. But what I will do here is I will actually add an image, which sounds great, and as long as it works, it'll be fantastic. But it does mean moving my iPad. So I'm about to pick up my iPad, and I'm about to head off looking for the camera. In fact, my iPad is red hot at the moment. Let me see if what I'm doing is double clicking. So I'm double clicking, and no, I don't have the camera. That's not good. So I'm going to go into here, click once to get out of that, and I'm going to find my camera. Which is a terrible, terrible idea. Let's try my camera. Can I find the camera? Camera, there we go. So into the camera. Now you won't see anything at the moment because my iPad's on a stand with a case on, but you will see something shortly. There we go. Dropping it down, you can now see my desk. Not the most exciting view, I'll grant you. You can even see the cable I've got plugged in, but I'll lose that. There's my keyboard. There's all my next stuff coming up. And there's my broadcast stuff. There it is, broadcasting to YouTube. There you go. So I'll take a picture of that. That'll do. Me broadcasting to YouTube. Hello, everybody on YouTube. Right, so it's on my camera roll. So I'm going to go back in here to Lightroom. And I'm going to choose to add from my camera roll. So let me get it back on the stand before I drop it. There we go. You need to give it permission. This is Apple's security at work. And I'm going to say OK there. Goes in here. Here's all my images. There they all are. There's the one I want in the top corner. That's what I want, and then just tap that to go in. And it will add in a 16th image. Sadly, not in Italy, but it will add it. So now it's saying 16 photos. So tap to go in there, and there it is right at the bottom. There's my screen. And I can do exactly the same as I would do with everything else. So there it is, a real behind the scenes view for you here. That's the magic that gets the live session onto YouTube. There we go. So there's my image. And I could do other things that I wanted to in here. If I wanted to apply some settings to it, some defaults to it, if I wanted to crop that image, I could do all of that. All intents and purposes, it's exactly the same. It's treating that image in exactly the same way as it would an image that arrived here from Lightroom on the desktop. It's just that this time it came from my iPad, from my camera roll. Now, what we need to see now is, did that go back to the desktop? And we've got to make a decision here, first of all. Right, what we're checking when we go back to the desktop. We're checking that the settings went with it. I think I cropped one. I made one black and white, didn't I? And I've got the new image to check. So those are the things that I'll be looking for when we get this back to the desktop. So getting my keyboard and returning to Lightroom. There we go. So I am in the Italy collection, and it's beaten me to it. It's done it. It's actually done it. Looking at the thumbnails down here, we've got all the images. Now, let's have a look at the settings we've got here. The double-headed arrow means that it's synchronizing with the mobile version. So the first double-headed arrow is next to the collection name. The second is in the top right-hand corner of all of the thumbnails. So each of these is being synchronized. The ones that I made changes to, one of them, that has had the changes made because it has the plus and minus on it, and it's saying photo has developed adjustments, and it didn't when we started, so they have definitely been written back there from the mobile version. Here's the black and white one, so that definitely has stuff written back to it, absolutely. And what else did I change? I put some changes on that one. Looking at that on the desktop, I would say that is ever so slightly blown out in the middle of that image, but that's a very difficult image to work with. It would need selectively adjusting rather than global adjustments. And I have the image that I've just taken. There is that image. Now, that image has something going on that the other images don't have. And that is, and it's just as well that the lower part of this is black, because it shows up that icon beautifully, which looks like a speech bubble. If you're wondering what it is, it looks like a speech bubble, but it's not a speech bubble. Does anybody know what that is? If you're using this on the mobile version, I would suspect that you probably do. The first time I saw it, I thought, the little peg's in the wrong place, because it's actually in the middle. But if you double click on that, it will take you to a map. And it's not quite accurate, but you can see it bouncing up and down. It's not far off either. It's not far off. It shows you where that image was taken. So if you look here up at the navigator, I am indeed in Sale in South Manchester. And I'm actually a little bit further south. We're on the border. We are on the border with Broadheath. That's where we are. So very close to the border. So if I move this across, the border's here, across there. So very close to the border. And that has come from my iPad, because when you take photos with your iPad, you get the GPS information. So as we discussed last time, these images, these other ones here, let's bring these back up. Let's go to our library and go and bring that image up. These images didn't have that GPS information, and I said my camera doesn't have GPS on it either. So what I do is I take one image on my iPad, and then when I get back, I take the location information from that one image and I apply it to all of the others. Obviously, it would be nice to have a newer camera that did it for me, but that is an equally viable workaround. And you can see with that it has actually worked, because that photo was taken live and it did actually work. Okay, so what we have got here is everything that we expected to have. Everything that we applied. So let's go into that one, because I made a lot of changes to that. Right, if I go into my develop module here, everything that I applied is applied in here. So you can see the whites are plus 45 and the blacks are minus 18. And I could now carry on and make more changes. Now I've got it back on my desktop. If I think the blacks need to be darker and the whites need to be whiter, oh dear, that is looking terrible. I think what I probably do with that is increase the highlights there. So bring up the colour like that. So I've made some changes. Now what will be happening in the background is it is writing all of those changes immediately up to Creative Cloud and then down to my mobile device. But let's try something else. Okay, so I'm going to lose Lightroom on my desktop. And I've got my iPad there. What I'm going to do now is I've got another device here, and I'm going to AirPlay this to my computer too. So there is my iPhone. There we go. And that too has Adobe Lightroom on it. And I'm going to tap to go in here. Now what you will see is this is already logged into my Creative Cloud account, but it was empty when I left it. So what I would expect to happen here is either it'll have been working away in the background, or it will do this and you will see it live. So let's have a look. It's going to do it live, she said confidently. There we go. And it was that fast. That was it. It said no collections, and then it said one collection, and that's it. You're straight into it. Everything is already there, including the new poster frame. And I'm going to tap on that. Again, I've got all of these overlays set so you can actually read them, but they do exactly the same. So tap to get rid of that. And let's have a look at the shells one. There we go. Let's go into there. And again, you've got all of the options that you need. So I'm double tapping there and my metadata comes up. Double tap again and it disappears. Now, obviously, working on this screen, even more difficult than working on the iPad screen. And you can see I'm scrolling through there what options you've got. But you do have the same options. So if I wanted to go in and look what settings I'd done, I could go in there, scroll across, and there they all are. And you can see I've got a +50 on the highlights there, which I didn't have before. And I've got the blacks as well. Let me add something new to this. I'll tell you what, I'm going to take some of that colour out because it really is a little bit much, isn't it? Let's take it out. So we've got just a touch of colour. And I've now made a change on the phone. Now, let's have a look with that. Where are we? Up here. Where have you gone? Where have you gone? Where's the shell one? There we go. Right, there it is. Now, I don't think those are the same at the moment, are they? Because the iPod Touch hasn't written it back yet. It's got the cloud icon, busily telling me there are unsaved changes. And I can tap on there and say sync now, and it will do. And it's about to write that back up to the cloud, which at some point, and this is always a nervy part of your demo, isn't it? When it's gone up to the Creative Cloud, will it then come down from the Creative Cloud and update on my iPad? And I think to do that successfully, I would need to move back into my collection, just so that image isn't open. And there you go, it changed. And if I go back into it, there are the changes. Now, what's happening at the moment is it's re-rendering it. So it was very red, very vibrant, and I've taken the colour out on the iPod Touch, and that has rippled through. So the last place to check is in Lightroom on the desktop. So let's have a look at that. And yes, it's gone back to there as well, hasn't it? So it's all sorted. So it's round-tripped itself from the iPod Touch up to the cloud, down to the iPad, and to the desktop as well. And that really is a live demo. It could all have gone hideously pear-shaped, but luckily it was all behaving itself tonight and it worked very well. So I'm going to head off and wrap up. Now, this is version 1 of Lightroom Mobile. So there are things that it can't do. The very first release didn't do the star ratings, but they've already added that. But you'll notice that there is a lack of keywords and certain other features as well, like virtual copies. I did mention it's a single user model only, so you can't sort of flick from one to the other without actually completely logging out. The other thing to really seriously bear in mind here, don't get confused about this being a backup. It is not a backup. It's not a backup service and it's not backing up your images. What it's doing is taking the smart previews up to the cloud with the information that goes with them, the metadata, and is passing that backwards and forwards. But your images are still on your desktop, so they will need backing up in some other way. You can actually back up your images to Creative Cloud if you want to, but it's a totally separate process from what's going on here, which is a workflow synchronization. The other thing is, it at the moment is iOS only. There is no Android version of this. There used to be a lot of Android apps from Adobe, but they really pulled back on them, and this one hasn't made it to Android yet. But there is a version for the iPad, there is a version for the iPhone, and they are dedicated to each app. So they are two separate apps, but they are both free of charge. So as I mentioned, we did cover Lightroom for the desktop last month, and that video is available on YouTube. So youtube.com/TheElaineGiles, all one word, and you will find that video. But be quick, you never know when it might disappear. Now, we've looked at the mobile version tonight, and next time we are looking at automating Lightroom. There are lots of ways that you can make working in Lightroom much faster, and that's what we'll be looking at. And that is on the 16th of October. At the same time, same place. We also added another session to this because once we'd scheduled them, we were just going to look at Lightroom, and then Apple killed Aperture. And I've had so many people saying, what am I going to do? I've got Aperture photos. How do I get them successfully into Lightroom? Well, it's a bit of a black art at the moment, but we are on the promise. once Yosemite's out and Aperture has totally gone and Lightroom have had time to update it, that Adobe will be providing a mechanism in conjunction with Apple to get you from Aperture to Lightroom. And that's what we'll be looking at, how to successfully make the switch from Aperture to Lightroom with your photos and as much metadata and editing in place coming with you. So that's what we'll be looking at on the 13th of November. Now, in between those two dates, we have snuck in another session. And this session is going to be the week after the Automating Lightroom one. And we're taking another look at Office 365 for the savvy Mac user. A lot of people think that Office 365 is nothing to do with the Mac, and you couldn't be more wrong. It's a fantastic service. It's amazingly cost effective. It is more than just the software or the apps. It is 1 terabyte of cloud storage. It's a whole range of iPad apps, and to be honest, it's a whole lot more as well. So I'd already planned that due to popular demand, but given what Apple have done today, which is unless you have access to Yosemite and unless you have upgraded to iCloud Drive, you no longer have access to your iWork documents in the cloud. You cannot get to them through your browser, which is rather a poor show, I thought. So, even more reason to come and have a look at what Office 365 can do. And for those, just to remind you, I have been Elaine Giles. You can find me all over the internet as Elaine Giles, but specifically my blog, elainegiles.co.uk. Also on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google+, you get the idea, So, thank you for attending. We're now going to head off into Q&A. I hope we're going to head off into Q&A because the way it's been sorted out here, it's not been the best night technically, apparently, online. Everything's gone swimmingly locally, though. So it could well be, whether you were with us live or not, you are watching the replay. And trust me, the replay will work wonderfully. I'll make sure it does. But until next time, I will see you next time.